Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And thank goodness, right? Welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And so far, we have been on a great run of shows, not just Thursdays, but Tuesdays also, because we have been talking to all the people and all the things, not all some of the people and some of the things and some of the great stuff that we are going to see. You knew I was going to do that. Now I'm starting to do that every time. Yeah, the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo. So we have that cute little logo over in the corner there. And honestly, it has been a total blast just talking to everybody, hearing the excitement, especially as we get closer and closer to the expo, because people are ready for ice. Some cold is starting to settle in finally, and people are excited.
Yeah, it's coming slowly but surely. But even us next week, they're talking about maybe some snow even. So got to get that plow hooked up. I'm not so certain that the snow is going to stick, but you never know around here.
Well, it's that point in the year where I did nervously ask Josh, do we need to winterize our boat? And he's like, nah. And honestly, usually I have to ask that 2 or 3 times before he's like, yeah, we should do it. But I guess we'll see, because the weather always dictates that. And sometimes it's better than you think, and sometimes it's the opposite. But either way, as long as we're working towards ice season, that's the goal. And I feel like based on last week's fishing, we're moving towards that. Fish are kind of starting to really move towards winter patterns. They're not there yet, though.
Yeah, I really think so. I think they're especially the panfish are in those transitions, like locked in. We have seen a few fish in the basins, not necessarily the biggest fish, maybe some of the smaller fish are out there, but yeah, you can definitely tell that the trend is moving that way. One thing in nature that we neglect to talk about a little bit is just daylight hours, right? And so even though it's not that cold, the cycle of daytime and nighttime, especially in the northern half of the states, that really does still play a role in some of that fish transition too. So I think just keep that in mind, just stay on the fish, check where you fished last week if you're a weekend fisherman like us, or just, if you're just follow them around, because they're going to be moving just a little bit at a time until that ice cap's over.
Well, and when you talk about the fish moving, I think that is the key, because the last time that we were out fishing, we found there were groups of fish that were starting to move towards cribs, deep structure, but those fish were kind of doing a lot of sitting. And we were doing a lot of coaxing the best that we could, right? But we found more of like what Josh was saying, those transitions, those fish were moving in those flats, and the fish that were moving were the fish that were tending to be eating. And at that point, it made it a lot less important, I guess, the presentation that we had out there. Fish were just a lot more willing to bite when they were moving around, cruising around. They were clearly looking for food. So find those fish that are moving. Don't just insist that the ones that you have found are going to eat, because they might not. And it's just that time of the year where they are in transition. So not to say that word again, but that is the key. The nice thing about the different shows like this is we get to talk to people from all over the ice belt, even though it's not quite ice yet. But people down south, they might have slightly warmer waters. People up north, they're like getting for real snow coming up, I heard, kind of like you mentioned too. So people up north, let us know your water temperatures, and all the way down south, you as well, because we love to see that trend across the way. Or maybe you winterized your boat, and that is okay as well. But otherwise, we will keep bringing you our fishing reports until we can't anymore. Yeah. So I guess with that, we have a really fun guest tonight. I guess I would say this is unusual for our show, but it shouldn't be, because this is the exact kind of thing that we love to talk about. And one of our honestly favorite people to bump into at the expo. So let's bring him in. Bob, thank you so much for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
So we have the pleasure of bumping into you a few years in a row. I guess we've gotten to know you, but for people who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm long since retired, and my wife says, you need a project. And I said, well, I wrote a little bit in high school. She said, well, you got to write about something you know. And I thought, well, I coached hockey for 35 years, but I've been fishing for 70 years, so I'm going to write about fishing. So I wrote my first book, Walter the Wily Walleye. It's a picture book about fishing, and it did okay. So the next year I did another one, and then the next year another one, and now I've done 6 books all featuring fishing. With my most recent one is the panfish party. Perch, crappie, and bluegill are having a party, and you're invited. So last book.
Your last book. Yeah. Oh, well, I secretly hope not.
My most recent book.
Yeah. Okay. So I honestly always love to hear when people come up with something, they have a love for fishing and then they're like, I should try to do blank. Sometimes in the show that's an invention, people come with a product. In this case, it's a book. And why I think that these are similar in this case is so often people watch from like the outside or whatever, if that's fair to say, and be like, oh, I can never do that. Whether it's an invention, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, whatever it is, people are like, I never could do that. So can you tell us a little bit about, I know you said you just sat down and did it. Was it really just that easy?
Well, the writing of the book is easy. You can have a good book, but if nobody knows anything about it, it's not going to go anywhere. So you really have to promote it. And I sat down and figured that how many books should I order in the first run? Well, I figured 1,500 books. And if it takes me 6 months or 6 years to sell 1,500 books, I'm happy with that. Well, I sold those out in about 6 months. And I'm now to the point where by the end of this year, I'm approaching 50,000 books in sales. So they told me as a self-published author, I'd be lucky to sell 250 books. Well, I'm way past that. So.
Oh my gosh. But I think part of this is because you fill such a unique niche, like so often we talk on the show about how do you get your kids involved in fishing? And like that moment you're like, I'm going to bring them on the boat. But then you like have to pack the boat and the tackle and the things and the bait and the kids and keep them occupied. And then like, that's not even talking about being on the boat and the hooks and all the things. Right. And so that's awesome and great memories and also secretly a disaster sometimes. But when you talk about getting kids involved in fishing, even things like reading books about fishing is honestly a perfect way to do that, to get them talking about it, to get them thinking about it.
I agree. Reading to your kids, getting them at an early age, and my books are aimed at, the 2 to 6 year old, where you start telling them some fishing stories and they get entertained by that. And it really keeps them interested. And it's good. All my books have won awards, and the illustrator does a great job of illustrating, Walter the Wily Walleye and Monica the Muskie. So the kids like the caricature nature of that. And there's a little story, and they learn something without even trying. They're learning something about fishing at the same time that somebody's reading the book to them, or they're starting to read themselves.
Okay, so first of all, you said people enjoying this 2 to 6, great age range. Probably you're dead on. I know you're the author, you are dead on. But I'm saying we have people in the comments all talking about how much they love it. Ryan Ebert, super great artist. He says that he loves it. And I agree. These books are almost, I don't know, dare I say nostalgic? I don't know. I didn't have this growing up, but it's something about this just feels like so close to your heart, so fun to read. And exactly what you're saying, people are going to pick things up along the way. The kids are going to have these conversations because it is not just about what these fish are doing. Kids are curious. They're going to say, oh, what is this fish going to eat? What is this fish going to do? All of those little side conversations. Where's our boat in the book? To have that moment with your child and plan that fishing adventure or plan, that fishing trip. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
You were going to say something.
The walleye book, it talks about what the baits are for walleyes: a grub, a minnow, a worm, and also a leech. And in the book, I say, and perhaps a leech. And I'm doing a podcast or an interview with somebody on public radio, and he said he was just out the day before with his son fishing, and they're going about baiting up the rods, and he looks over at Dad and says, perhaps a leech. So the little kid was quoting from my book. I thought, well, that's pretty cool that the kids are quoting from my book, perhaps a leech.
Oh my gosh, that's actually awesome. I feel like I'm going to always say that now. I don't don't know why that line just grabs me too, but that's really cute that they would do that. And honestly, like what an honor that they've like read your book and like would quote that, would think about that while they are fishing. What a cool connection.
Having been in the fishing world, I was a rep for fishing, and I was on the pro circuit for a few years. And so I got to know some of the people. So a lot of the names in fishing have endorsed my books. Like Al Linder has endorsed my bass book, and Jay Shakurat has endorsed my bass book. And my muskie book is endorsed by Joe Booker, Pete Mena, Brett Alexander, 3 muskie guys. And they said all the information in the muskie book is actually accurate about how to catch a muskie, how to do the figure 8 and do that. So the kids are learning something about whatever fish they're targeting. They're actually learning something about the fish too.
Well, and the one thing I like about these books is that, like you said, you have a wonderful illustrator. They do really well at capturing not only like the fun aspects of fishing, but also a little, the fish are anatomically correct for the most part. Like it looks like an underwater world, and I think for kids and even some adults, it's hard to imagine what underwater looks like, right? And so this kind of bridges that gap for kids, and when they go out in the boat, they can visualize your book as like what's under the water. So Walter the Wily Walleye is out there in the water because he was in the water in the book. And so I think that's a really cool thing that you're providing, is that image for kids, because there's not a whole lot of that for fishing. Most of fishing is like nonfiction, right? It's a lot of real stuff, and that's kind of hard to conceptualize as a child, I feel like.
Yeah. One of the books in the ice fishing book, Walter Under the Ice, I've got a picture in there, and as I'm showing that at various shows, somebody said, "Boy, that sure looks like Dick's bait." And I said, "It should." I went in there and took a picture of that and sent it to the illustrator. That's why it looks like Dick's bait inside, because you see the tanks with the rosy reds and the minnows and stuff. So it's actually, when you walk into the bait store, that's exactly what you see. And so the kids are, well, that's kind of cool. I can go to the bait store and get some rosy reds if I'm going up there ice fishing.
Oh
That's
my gosh,
awesome.
that is so cool. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, I have to ask, you you started with the walleye book, right? Is that just because walleyes are easy to write about, or because that's your favorite fish?
I probably have more experience with walleye fishing, and that was the first one. And I wanted to keep it in the Midwest. I didn't start out by going to bass fish and trying to sell them in Texas and Florida. I kept it with what I know and in the Midwest. And after Keith Gavias read that book, he said, if I'd have read that book when I was younger, I'd have caught more fish on the professional walleye circuit. So I get the comments from the pro fishermen that it's kind of entertaining that they.
Yeah. Okay. And so then you have the walleye under the ice book. So ice fishing, that is super fun. How do you choose your next book or your next species?
I just kind of flowed from one thing to another. The walleye book was the first one. The second one was flying to the boonies, and that was predicated on 20 different flying trips that I've taken to Canada. And every time I've gone to Canada, it's a new adventure and a new experience. And so I wrote about that. And ice fishing was starting to come on. So I wrote the Walter Under the Ice Fishing, under the ice book. And I thought, well, I've got to expand a little bit. And that's when I went to the Battle of the Bass, Larry and Lily Largemouth versus Sam and Sarah Smallmouth. And of course, muskies are big in the Midwest. So I had Monica the Muskie. Originally, it was going to be Mike. But my wife said, why don't we get the women involved in that? So I said, okay, we'll go with Monica, because usually the female muskie is larger and a little meaner, so it fits right into the program.
Oh, that's a good point, actually. That's funny, actually. And then finally the panfish.
Well, the panfish, a lot of my retail accounts were saying, you've done walleyes and muskies and bass. What about panfish? And I thought, well, that's the first experience most kids have is panfish, trying to catch panfish, and it's the most simple thing, and they're available. And so I thought, well, that's a good idea. So then I had to think about how I wanted to approach that and make it a party that going fishing for panfish is kind of fun. So it's like going to a party. So that's how I got that idea.
Oh my gosh. So that's awesome. That's the one I'm most excited to read. It is like a party. That's how you catch a million fish. Isn't that what we were talking about?
Its longevity is how you catch a million fish. You live long enough.
Oh my gosh.
Probably
We had
Dave
that
Gens
conversation before the show.
Yeah.
Dave Gens and Gary Roach and a few of our other buddies, they've been around a long time and they've caught a lot of fish in their days.
Mhm.
Okay, so I feel like I do have to fill in the people at home. We're talking about catching a million fish. We started talking about this honestly before the show. So before the show, we meet and we always, I don't know, give people like a little spiel of what to expect. I don't know. You guys at home, you watch all the time. You know what we're doing here, right? But I don't even know how we got on the topic, but about catching so many fish, right? And we were just,
Yeah.
do you think you've caught a million fish? And we couldn't decide. We couldn't decide if we caught a million fish. Bob, you think that you have?
Well, that was a question I got. I was doing a show up in Eau Claire, and I stayed over. And the next day, I did elementary school. I had kindergarten to second grade for one group, and then third to fifth graders. And I'm showing them how to rig a slip bobber and talk about writing and everything. And then you open up the questions at the end, and the questions are coming out of, where do they come up with these questions? One of the first questions was, "How old are you?" Well, and I said, "I'm older than dirt." And they said, "Well, how many fish have you caught?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I probably caught a million fish." And, "Oh no, you can't have caught a million fish." And so then I try to explain what a million is, and well, if you go to Canada for a week and you catch 100 walleyes a day and 200 northerns a day, multiply that for a week, and then 52 weeks, and then 70 years, and everything, you can probably come up with a million fish. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm quitting my job to fish every day in Canada. Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
Well, you can probably catch a million white bass and sheephead if you hang around Lake Winnebago enough.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm going for a million crappies. Oh my gosh. You do have to love kind of that freshness of children though. When you go to the schools and they ask unique questions and they have all these things, it must be so, I guess, inspiring to see their interest in just how they're caught by all of this.
Well, at the shows, it's fantastic. The kids going by and they, "Oh look, Mom, we got that book," and other ones that are the testimonials are, "That's my nephew's favorite book," or "That's my granddaughter's favorite book," and that makes me feel so good. And a lot of people, they want to have a picture with me, or because I sign all the books I put out there to the retailers and at all the shows, and then I personalize them and put the kid's name in there. So that's their personal book. So it's so much fun, and they have a book, and then I also sell little plush fish to go with it. The kids all want the plush book. The parents want to buy, or they want the plush animal. The parents want the book. The grandparents will buy the book and the plush. So that works out like a charm there.
Okay, so that's a really great point. So when you're at the expo, so you're going to have each of the books with you, right? Like you bring
Right.
all of them.
Yep.
Okay. And then is there a plush fish to go with each book?
Yep. I've got a muskie, a walleye, a bass, and a perch. So I got them all covered.
Nice. That's actually awesome. There is honestly nothing more fun than watching at the expos and seeing like the kids. Well, I was going to say walk around. It's usually the ones in the strollers and they're like holding their little fish or their book or something. Honestly, that's one of those things this comes full circle kind of to what we were talking about before is getting kids involved in fishing. It doesn't have to be the hooks. It doesn't have to even be the actual fish. Like all of these other little experiences totally add to that. And that is so fun. So I also have to ask, do you have a favorite book?
Probably my first one, because it's the most popular and it's in its 7th printing. And Walter's got a place in my heart, and that's the one I've talked the most about. And so, yeah, Walter is my favorite book.
Okay, maybe this is unfair to ask. Is that also then your best selling? Do you have a best selling?
Yeah, that is the best-selling book, the first one I did.
That's so cool. I mean, people do love walleyes, and it's just interesting to see if it's like a battle of the species, right? Like all of a sudden one day everybody buys the Monica the Muskie book, and then you just know muskie fishing is taken off.
Well, because I've come out with one book every year, I've been at this 5 or 6 years. When the people come to the shows, they don't even look at the new one. They just, I want the new one. They want to have the whole series. They're happy with the previous books, and the kids are happy with them. So whatever the new one is, that's usually what they buy. They buy the new one. But the old ones they like so much that they buy them as gifts. And some people will say, I don't have any kids. And then it's up to me to say, well, you can give them at a baby shower, or you can put one up in your cabin for the rainy day when you have guests. I can give them all kinds of reasons why they can buy the books, because if they don't have kids, that doesn't mean they can't buy books.
That's true.
I feel like that's going to be me at this ice expo. To be honest.
I think so.
I don't know. It is just a fun thing to have the whole lineup of. I mean, they are adorable illustrations. I mean, honestly, I imagine the hardest part about getting through this whole process, like having the story like come alive in your head, getting it onto paper, and then having somebody else try to capture those pictures for you. I mean, that's got to be difficult.
Well, I work with the illustrators. A lot of people write a book and then it goes off to an illustrator and you never see it again and it doesn't come out the way you want it. I work with the illustrator and they ask me questions. Well, here's a picture of the walleye. Is this right? And I said, well, you got to put a white tip on the tail, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. I mean, I let them know what's real and what's not real.
That's actually a really great point. I mean, again, when we're talking about that little bit of learning that you do when you don't realize that white tip on the tail, just to always have that imagery there, because, sometimes, oh man, not to go down this hole, but if you like go online, you search walleye, or in the dawn of AI, you never know what images could be AI, or I mean, look for that. But those little nuances, that white tip on the tail, those things are what you look for. And then especially, again, to be a good fisherman, I mean, I guess you got to be able to identify those species, a walleye, a sauger, a this, of that, to make sure that you're in line with all those regulations. People really sometimes struggle with that. But when you can be, just see that growing up, when you can already be familiar with that, that's actually a really cool point.
Well, in the Walter Under the Ice, a couple things in there, like people will identify and say, that fish finder looks like a Vexler. I said, it should, because that's what I gave a Vexler to the illustrator to make sure it looked like a Vexler, because that's what I grew up with. I mean, when Dave Gens started out with his clam and a Vexler, we were one of the first groups that brought those in to sell them to Fleet Farm. And all of a sudden, Vexler became very popular. But, so I go back and I make that point of, yeah, that's a Vexler in there.
That is actually really awesome. And so then you're like still out and fishing and everything. So, I mean, like your next favorite fishing species is what your next book is going to be about.
That's up for debate. I know I'm planning a lot of trips this summer. I'm going to do more fishing than what I did the last couple of years. I was out there working shows, and I'm still doing shows. I'm still going to do, the bigger shows, the Ultimate Fish Show in Detroit, the Chicagoland in Schaumburg, the Madison Fishing Expo. So I'm picking and choosing where I want to go. And the reason I go to those shows, that's where the fisher people are. I mean, I'm selling fishing books. I can sell a few at a farmer's market, but if I want to sell a lot of books, like at the Ice Expo in Oshkosh last year, I ran out of books on Saturday. I had to drive back to Brookfield to get more books. So, when you can sell 400 books in 2 days, you're selling books.
That is actually really crazy. That's a long drive. That's like really hard to plan for. That's actually funny.
Well, when I go to, greater distances, like I'm going to do the Bassmaster Classic in Fort Worth, I'm not going to be able to drive home to Wisconsin to get more books. So I'll have to take 700 or 800 books with me. My expedition is going to be pretty filled with books when I drive that far. I'm not coming home to get more.
And just start shipping them from the printer. That is really funny. Oh my goodness. Awesome. So, I mean, as far as all of these different books, I mean, these are all going to be at the expo. So I know that you kind of sell them individually. Do you sell them all as one big set?
I sell them individually, and I do a discount at the shows and online at my website, boballenbooks.com. I give a discount. If you order 3 books, you get a discount. Any of the 3 books, you get a discount. And it's always free shipping when I sell books on my website. They can go to Amazon, but if they buy it at Amazon, it's not a signed book. Where if you order online, I personally sign it, or at the shows, they're all signed and personalized with the kids' names. So you can get the books anywhere you want. You can go to a retailer or Barnes and Noble or Amazon, but I personalize them and pay a little more attention if they go online to Bob Allen Books or go to the shows where I'm at. And I always put where I'm going to be on my website. I put appearances on there so they know what shows I'm going to be at.
That's actually really awesome. I think Josh was able to get the website and put that in the comments. So wherever people are watching from, that's something that they're going to be able to click on and just kind of look through as we're talking, or gift shopping later, or Christmas shopping, or whatever. So that's going to be really great. I guess I'm really looking forward to bumping into you at the expo. That's great that you have that posted there on your website. Are there like little previews of the books if I click on them?
It's got a little blurb about them, but not a whole lot.
Yeah,
And on Amazon, it talks about a little bit of the book on Amazon too. And if you buy a book and you like it, you can go to Amazon, leave a little blurb, because it helps that people say they like something to get other people to buy them.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Testimonials
I
are
do
great.
like your little hack also that order from the website and to get like the signed book or to get an inscription, because Amazon is fast. That's great, but that's really cool to have a signed copy.
Yeah.
Cool. So as far as I know that you kind of already said this, but your next expo is the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo, right? And then there was
Right.
a few things after that.
Yeah, after that, I'll be at the Wisconsin Dells. I go to the National Professional Anglers Association meeting the first weekend in January. And then the very next weekend is the Ultimate Fishing Show in Detroit. And that's a pretty big show. I really enjoy that show too.
And then I know we said to check out that schedule on the website. Do you do social media as well?
I do a lot, but I don't do a lot of selling with the social media. I'll post pictures, and I enjoy putting pictures of my sons and grandsons playing basketball more than on there to promote my books. When I go to my retailers, I'll post the retailer that my book is available there. And a lot of times my retailers, I come into a store and they'll take a picture of me holding the book. And so they help promote it too. I've got a great relationship with the retailers. When I go into the stores, I talk to the clerks and say, well, if somebody comes in, got kids and they're looking for a fishing book, I got fishing books, because there aren't a lot of those out there. And so if you get that relationship, they won't just sell one book, they'll sell a lot of books. And I never know where I'm going to be selling the books. I go into it, say like in Minocqua, I'm in 3 different places. I'm in a bait store, I'm in a gift store, and I'm in a bookstore. And they don't compete with one another. I don't go into a town and set up 2 competing factions against one another. I try to select my retailers with some thought that they're providing something for the family, and somebody that is going to the bookstore all the time probably isn't stopping at the bait store every day. And so I never know who's going to do the best job selling them. A lot of my places aren't really into books, but I'm only book in the store. So say like a place up north that sells clothing, like Hooked and Tagged, and they sell all kinds of clothing, but they sell kids clothing too. And they got my book sitting there right by the kids clothing. So they see that, and that's just an impulse buy. They see a silly fish book and they buy that. and they sell a ton of books. I wouldn't have thought that. So I never know who's going to be selling my books or where they're going to appear. A lot of times I'm at a show, I'll say, where did you see the book? And they'll say, oh, I don't you remember? You sat next to me on a plane. We were flying to Arizona, going to the balloon festival, and you gave me a card, and I had my little kid there, and you pull out a book and you read a book to him. So I can't remember all the people I talked to and give out cards to, but there's a lot of stories about where my books end up and how they end up there. I'm in an airport somewhere, and I've always got a couple books with me, and kids are waiting around for a plane or something. Invariably, I'll have a couple kids come over and sit, and I'll read a book to them while they're waiting for their connection to Disneyland or wherever they're going.
That's really fun. That's super memorable, and the kind of thing that would make me want to go fishing. Oh my goodness. So if people are looking for some of those local places to buy their books, is there a list of places that sell your books also on your website?
I do not have that on my website, but you can go and check out any independent bookstore. I mean, and they're in a lot of different places. People, they email me telling me, yeah, I saw your book at such and such, or oh, I saw your book here, I saw your book there. I'm thinking, well, thanks for that information. I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
That is actually really awesome. So this is kind of like a Where's Waldo or a Where's Walter, I guess, as people are looking around in their favorite stores, bait shops, whatever that is, look for these books. Maybe come and post on social media about it, because what a fun connection. It's like, oh, I saw you at the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo. But that is a cool connection and cool shout out. So what a fun thing to look for. Awesome.
Well, I appreciate your mentioning of the books, and I appreciate being on tonight.
Yeah. We really appreciate having you, sorry, my dog is like over here doing things. We appreciate you being on as well. Thank you so much for your time and talking about all the books. I know that we're looking forward to bumping into you at the expo as well. So really looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, come by and say hi to Walter. He's always open to talk to people.
Yeah,
Will
absolutely.
do.
Yeah, absolutely. And to our people at home, thank you guys for being here as well, because that is always a big part of the fun. If you are out there fishing, good luck. If you winterize your boat, that's okay, because we're hoping to see you on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.